first time I'm speaking publicly in a little while. I would like to use this opportunity to make some comments on an issue on the minds of many Ghanaians, which is the decision by government to opt for an IMF program to stabilize the economy in the midst of global crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war, a global crisis that has visited untold hardships on Ghanaians, with rising prices of virtually everything, from fuel to bread to tomatoes, building materials, and so on. In the midst of this global crisis, Ghana's fiscal and debt sustainability has worsened. Some commentators and analysts have argued that the COVID-19 expenditures by government alone could not be the reason for the large increase in the fiscal deficit and the debt stock. In fact, they are right. The COVID-19 expenditures alone were not the reason for the large increase in Ghana's debt stock by the end of 2021. In fact, as I stated in my April 7th lecture this year, in addition to COVID-19, there are two major items of expenditure that are critical in understanding the evolution of the fiscal deficit and the debt stock. And these two items are the banking sector cleanup and the energy sector excess capacity payments. The excess capacity payments of 17 billion Ghana cedis relate to a legacy of take-or-pay contracts that saddled our economy with annual excess capacity charges of close to $1 billion a year. These were basically contracts to supply energy to Ghana way in excess of our requirements at the time. But we were obligated to pay for the power whether we used it or not. The excess capacity payments of this 17 billion includes a 7 billion cedi payment for gas resulting from the signing of an offtake agreement for a fixed quantity of gas with ENI Sankofa on a take-or-pay basis, which was way in excess of what was needed at the time. Not keeping up with the excess capacity payments would have meant throwing the country back into a new bout of doomsday or power outages. We were also confronted with a banking crisis as a result of the mismanagement of the banking sector. Ghana's banking system was on the verge of collapse, and not dealing with it decisively would have meant a disaster for the economy, with millions of people losing their savings. So we had direct COVID-19 expenditures amounting to 12 billion Ghana cedis. We had the banking sector cleanup costs amounting to 25 billion Ghana cedis, and the excess capacity payments amounting to 17 billion Ghana cedis. And the data shows that the three items, when you take COVID, banking sector cleanup, and the excess capacity payments, cumulatively amounted to 54 billion Ghana cedis. And that is the equivalent of $7 billion. Three items, $7 billion that of expenditure which had to be taken. You couldn't say you wouldn't spend to rescue the banking sector because you are in trouble. The economy will collapse. You couldn't say you won't pay excess capacity payments because you will have power outages. You couldn't say you wouldn't spend on the COVID because we had a job to save lives. So the Ministry of Finance estimates, and this money, this $54 billion, was borrowed money. The Ministry of Finance estimates that the interest payment on just this 54 billion Ghana cedis that was borrowed for these three items is 8.5 billion Ghana cedis annually. And this represents 23% of our annual interest payments of about 37 billion Ghana cedis. So to put the expenditure on these three items in perspective, it is important to juxtapose it against the total expenditure releases on some of the government's key flagship projects, including the free SHS, the One District, One Factory, Planting for Food and Jobs, development authorities, the Ghana Card, Zongo Development Fund, NAPCO, teacher training allowance, nursing training allowance. The data shows that the expenditure on these flagship policies that I've mentioned, the total expenditure by government on these flagship policies over a 5-year period amounted to 15.6 billion Ghana cedis. 5 years of free SHS, NAPCO, and all of that, 15.6 billion Ghana cedis. And this is compared with the 54 billion Ghana cedis expenditure on the three exceptional items. So the expenditure on the three exceptional items is more than 3 times the expenditure on the flagship programs over 5 years. In fact, the annual interest cost of the borrowing, the 54 billion for the three exceptional items would pay for double the annual cost of all the three flagship programs I've referred to. So it should be noted, ladies and gentlemen, that without the 54 billion debt for the three exceptional items, the COVID-19, the financial sector cleanup, and the energy sector excess capacity payments, Ghana's debt to GDP would be within the sustainability thresholds of some 68% instead of the 76.6% at the end of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, following the Russia-Ukraine war, energy and food prices skyrocketed globally. For many advanced economies, inflation reached 30 and 40-year highs. Inflation in Ghana has increased to 29.8% in June 2022. Global supply chains were disrupted and shipping costs increased by over 1,000%. Economic growth slowed down. Higher revenue projections in the 2022 budget based on tax exemptions, property rates, and the e-levy did not materialize. The debt sustainability analysis continued to place Ghana at a high risk of debt distress. There was a credit ratings downgrade by the international credit ratings agencies. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, before COVID-19, Ghana was borrowing some $3 billion annually from the international capital market. But following COVID-19, the international capital markets have been largely inaccessible by emerging market countries like Ghana. Furthermore, as a result of increases in interest rates in the developed economies and increased perceived risk of emerging market economies, investors have pulled $50 billion from emerging market bond funds just in this year, in 2022. 50 billion have been pulled. Non-resident holders of bonds in Ghana were not also rolling over maturities. In a decline in foreign exchange reserves also resulted. With the challenges in accessing the international capital market, balance of payment support was needed to bridge this financing gap, stabilize the economy, and create the space to implement structural reforms and restore debt sustainability. And this is really the reason why Ghana had to go to the IMF. I should again note that Ghana has been hit with a quadruple whammy. A quadruple whammy. The energy sector excess capacity payments, banking sector cleanup, COVID-19, and the Russia-Ukraine war. We have been hit by this quadruple whammy. And I say again that if you take out the fiscal impact of this quadruple whammy, Ghana will not be going to the IMF for support because our fiscal and debt and balance of payments outlook would be sustainable. Of the 4 factors, COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war were external, and the other two, the banking sector cleanup and the excess capacity payments, were the result of policies of the previous government. Today, all over the world, fuel prices are rising in virtually every country. Food prices are rising, inflation is high, it's at a high for many years, currencies are falling in value, fiscal deficits are rising, debt levels are increasing. This is happening globally, and this tells us that what we are dealing with is a global phenomenon. Let me give you an analogy to make my point. If you ask a carpenter to roof your house, and he roofs this house, and suddenly the roof collapses, without any rainfall or wind, suddenly you have a collapsing of the roof. Will you not blame the carpenter who did the roofing? Will you not blame the carpenter? But if the carpenter roofs your house and the roof collapses because there's a tornado and a storm which has blown away roofs and windows and walls of many houses, will you blame the carpenter? Will you blame the carpenter? So, let us understand the context. Let us understand the context. In one situation, you will definitely blame the carpenter. In another situation, you will blame the tornado. So, ladies and gentlemen,